Hey geeks, what is up? Welcome back to another video. It is the 29th of February, the leap year day. Is that what they call it? The leap year day, the extra day in the month of February. I don't prescribe any real significance to the extra day in February every 4 years. Other than it's just an extra payday. I have the final box of Whatnot comics that I bought. Comics that I bought on Whatnot. I have the final box that I'm going to unpack in this video. I am also going to show some comics that I picked up from my local comic book shop recently. I went up there in search of Frank Miller's Ronin Book 2, issue number 6, which I had, I think I mentioned it in my last video, wondering when it was going to come out, and it, like, I think later on that day or the day after, I saw somebody online had posted that it was out. So I went up there looking for it, and they were sold out of it, so they ordered it for me. Hopefully I'll get it in a couple of weeks, but they were very cool about getting into the system, and whatever that ordering system is that the local comic book shops use. I guess it's through Diamond. I'm not sure. I'm not like very intimately aware of how all of that distribution channel stuff works, but I know it's a big deal in comics, a big part of how the industry functions and performs and so forth. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, they showed me the system that they were in, and I was able to look at like the actual covers, the variant covers that were available. So I bought cover A and variant cover B. Variant cover B was by Frank Miller, and it looks spectacular. It's another one of those just like basic, just line and ink, black and white drawings that he does. If you haven't seen those, look at them, regardless of what you think of the comic book. But I think the covers on that book are pretty spectacular, and have been for all 6 issues. So I'm looking forward to getting those. While I was there, though, of course, I couldn't leave there empty-handed. So we're going to take a look at some of those. Next order of business before we get into looking at some comics. In my last video, I had talked about and shown examples of modern comics and the coloring and the artwork that they use. I think I was specifically talking about the coloring. Because the artwork that I was giving examples of, the penciling or whatever they were doing, maybe it was digital penciling in an iPad or something like that, was actually pretty decent in the Marvel GODS comics that are coming out now. But the coloring was the same kind of bland, monochrome, muddy type coloring that's been plaguing these books for several years now, over 10 years now, I would say. Maybe 2 decades actually now, when I think about even early 2000s comic books. And interestingly enough, today I was watching the latest video from the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel, and if you go and watch that at the 7-minute and 37-second mark, Jim Rugg goes on a kind of a rant about coloring in comic books, and the fact that stems from the digital tools that most of comic book creators are using now. And basically what he was saying is, it seems like a lot of these guys just use the digital default settings in the software that they're using, and it makes everything look the same. And he was talking about how terrible the coloring is. He said he walked into a local comic book shop and looked at the rack of all the new comics, and they all look the same. And I agree. And even when you open them up and thumb through them, they all look the same. I think Eddie P had made the point that the digital, the reliance on digital swallows up the pencil work, I think is what he says. So I mean, you can have excellent pencil work in a comic book, but it just doesn't shine when the digital coloring and inking suck. When it's just somebody hashing out a job to pick up a paycheck, the comic book loses its soul. You know what I mean? And if you go back and look at my last video, I mean, that's pretty much, I think, what I was portraying was there wasn't any oomph, to the modern day stuff versus, the comics I was throwing down from the Bronze Age. Looking at the panels, looking at the covers, it's evident. It's evident. I don't know how anyone could look at the two eras, products from the two eras, and say, oh, these are comparable looking comics. No, the comics, from the gold and silver, Bronze Age, and 90s, were beautiful, maybe not so much the 90s. Y'all know how I feel about the 90s. No, I give the 90s a lot of grief, but compared to the modern age, man, the 90s is looking like some Michelangelo stuff, man, compared to what we're seeing in the modern age. So, anyway, it was an interesting rant. Go check it out. I think the title of the video is "We Are So Disappointed in Comics Lately" or something like that. But it just dropped today. They put out a video every day, and this is their February 29th video. So I thought that was funny. I guess I was kind of prophetic over last weekend, complaining about the same thing that they're complaining about. But they've brought it up before, and they have. I think, especially Jim Rugg today makes an excellent point, and I think it's part of the problem with why comics aren't selling. Mainstream comics aren't selling because they're just bland. They all look bland, and look, there's issues with the story writing too. But if you can't create a product that's visually interesting, no one's going to give a shit about the story. They're not even going to get to the story because they're not going to buy the book. When I go to the comic book store and I start looking at comics that I've never seen or in some cases never heard of, I'm going to thumb through a few pages to see if it looks visually interesting to me. And by doing that, I'm going to kind of get the gist of what the story is, but I'm not going to stand there and read the entire story. Obviously, I would rather buy the comic book and support my local comic book shop. But but that visual, that cover and a few pages inside are going to be what catches my eye and make me want to buy it and take it back and read it. So when I'm thumbing through just anything random that I pick off the shelf from IDW or Boom or Marvel or DC, Image even, and it all kind of looks the same. And, look, again, Rugg made a good point in terms of look, if 15% of comics looked this way, that would be fine. It would kind of be like its own artistic style niche in and of itself, but it's not 15%. It's like 80% of the new comics that come out look this way, that are bland this way. There might be a couple of pages here and there that kind of stand out. I've seen that where, you've got a 20-page book and maybe two of the pages are mildly interesting in terms of the color. Usually they're splash pages, but nowhere near anything. I mean, go back to pick up an issue of the New Gods from Kirby, and it's just every page is just grabbing you by the lapels, man, or pick up anything by Starlin, that he was doing at Marvel, or pick up anything by frickin' Liefeld in the 90s, man, and every page is just grabbing you by the lapels, man. It's gonna get your attention. So there's got to be more of this in comics. So anyway, rant over on that. But let me know what you think. Drop a comment below, and we can have a conversation about it. But I think a lot of people, not everybody, but I think a lot of people, especially us old coots, I think we all are thinking along those lines. I've seen it in other channels, that are discussing comic books, and it's an issue. And when I see it, okay, Rant's going to continue. When I see it, and I see it so, frequently, and there's such a continuation of it, it makes me feel like the not so much the creators, actually, really. I don't even fault so much even, definitely not the pencilers and not the writer, but I kind of fault the colorist and the inker a little bit. But who I really fault, though, is the corporation that runs the comic book, especially the big ones like Marvel and DC. It's like, you clearly don't care about the product that comes out on the stand. You don't give a shit, and go back and you look at guys like Stan Lee or Jeanette Kahn when she was at DC, or Jim Shooter or Valentino. They cared. They cared about how those comics looked. They may not have always been the best comics. You know, you've got, you know, being an editor of large line of comics is surely not an easy job. But you can't tell me that those guys and gals didn't care about the overall look and feel of their comics. Now, I'm not so sure with some of these publishers. I'm not so sure. I think it's just like, hey, let's just, you know, regurgitate product out onto the market, and because there's some kind of a loss leader inside of a larger corporation, Disney or Warner Brothers, you know. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with comics, but it's something that needs to be fixed if they care. And I sadly, I don't know if a lot of them really care that much. So who knows, man? Maybe in 5 years we're all going to be reading manga, period. You know, and that would be fine because manga's pretty much awesome. So, but I still like old school comics too. You know, I still like the way American comics look. All right, so we have the final box here from Whatnot. That was 11 minutes of rant. Now we'll just look at some comics. This is the box. I pre-opened it, but I have not dug into it, so it's kind of a mystery box. I don't remember what's in this particular box. So we're going to find out together. Let's see what we have here. All right. Don't need that anymore. Not a whole lot, but this is cool. They protected them by taping it to this cardboard piece here, which means I got to break out the old knife and do a little surgery. Yeah, I think about comics, the modern comic book industry frequently, because I do think that there are so many ways that it can be better and should be better because of the tools that are available. Actually, comics actually should be better. Certainly one of the upsides of all this is that we are getting more comics than ever before. I mean, there are comics being made that you and I don't even know about. Like, I find stuff all the time, you know, and then when you factor in just purely web-based comics, webtoons, and that kind of stuff. You know, and then, of course, there's all kinds of stuff in Japan that we don't know about. And then, you know, and now, you know, love it or hate it, or be indifferent to it, there's AI comics that we don't even know about it. And, you know, half of them, if you might hate AI, but some of them might have pretty decent stories attached to them, you know? So, yeah, I mean, we definitely have the tools and the platforms to ensure that more comics are being made. But I just think that, you know, like Jim Rugg said, we should have more comics where people are sort of like making them look like a comic that only that person can make, you know? Individual unique styles need to come through. And speaking of that, individual unique styles, Lone Wolf and Cub with a Frank Miller cover. Oh, I love these. I love these with the Frank Miller covers. This is issue number 2 with an introduction by Frank Miller. So I've only had Lone Wolf Cub in those little collected paperback editions, and I think First took those and they you know, reprinted them. Obviously, I think they reprinted them in color. No, they didn't. They did them in black and white. But boy, they look beautiful. They look beautiful in this size. Because you may have seen like the smaller ones. I forget who published them, you know, but they're small, you know. They're not even like regular manga sized. What do they call those? Tankobons? Tankobons, I think. So, and these came out, when did these come out? 1987 is when these were published. Yeah, that's the cover by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley. too much glare over here. Let's adjust lighting. Okay, that's better. Yeah, these are cool, man. These are cool. I want to get all of these eventually. The other format, it's nice to have them condensed, but it's just so small. It doesn't do the artwork justice. Here's another one, issue 15. Let's see here. This cover was by Bill Shekenitz. Yeah, so that was cool. I guess they went out, recruited a bunch of American talent to do the covers for these. Not sure how many issues come out of this particular format. Looks like it's about, it is 40, it's 65 pages. So that's cool. Issue number 30. Another awesome cover. Who did the cover on this? Matt Wagner. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen Matt Wagner do like a samurai themed artwork before. Yeah, you know what would be cool is to get these collected like in an absolute sized edition, like an absolute Lone Wolf and Cub, like like DC does with their properties, an omnibus type edition. That would be awesome. Who knows if that'll ever happen. This looks like, I think this is another Matt Wagner cover. I think is that his signature. Let's see, there he's kind of fallen off a cliff. This is issue number 33. Yeah, I got to find out how many issues there are of this, and work on getting all of them collected. And I've been seeing these more and more. I didn't used to see them much at all, but for some reason lately, I've been seeing a lot of them. Speaking of samurai stuff, I finished up watching Blue Eye Samurai on Netflix. That show was very well done. If you like anime, you like samurais, you definitely want to check this show out. I was bowled over by how good the art direction and animation direction in that show is. The characters are very well developed. The action sequences are fantastic. They would do themselves well to make a live action version of that. I'm definitely down for season 2 on that. I was a little on the fence for a while there. I felt like the show kind of veered a little bit into a little bit of man hatred. Like every other line of dialogue was like, "Oh, men are stupid. They suck." And but it's all kind of in the context of the story and the character and so forth. So it's you watch it to the end. I think the final episode really kind of reinvigorated my enthusiasm for the show. Not that it wavered that much, because it is so well done. I mean, there are episodes in that 8 story arc that exceed half the live action stuff I've seen. And indeed, even some live action samurai movies that I've seen. So it is just so well done. I don't know, I don't know much beyond it other than it's like a husband and wife team that created it. I know that like Kevin Hart was one of the executive producers. George Takei is one of the voice actors. Maya Erskine is one of the main character voice actress. I don't know too much about the writing team, but man, they really got their samurai tropes down. They all the elements are there, and the just the visuals of the animation. I mean, I can't say enough about it. I think it's probably the most visually striking animated thing I've seen since like Samurai Jack. But it's a different style of animation. But Samurai Jack was very, very visually compelling. All right, what else do I have here? I'm going to put these in order. Got another series here. So, let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, wait. I got some more Lone Wolf and Cub. Let's go through those. All right. Lone Wolf and Cub number 35. Matt Wagner on the cover again. Awesome artwork. Man, that line and brush stroke. Definitely no digital involved in making these. These are artists. This is artisan manga right here. Definitely no digital in here. Some good use of screen tone, though. You can probably see that as a moire pattern on the video. Yeah, good stuff. So it's issue 35. Issue number 4. Check out that Frank Miller cover. That is unmistakably Frank Miller right there. Badass. Badass. All right. Megaman. I've picked up these in the past, and I'm not. It's one of those series. Like, I think I've read one issue of it. I kind of like it. It's more that I like the character. I have some manga that are I have some Megaman manga, and it just kind of always intrigued me. Like, I think this is tied to a video game, but I've never played the video game, so it's one of those curiosities, I think, to me. And so when I see them out in the wild, I collect them. But this is issue number 2 of this particular run. There's different runs, but this is with Boom Studios. I just got done trashing modern day comic book art, but I find the palette. This is okay. Let me back up. So this is a comic where I think modern art kind of suits the subject matter well, because it's and I do like the coloring that I've seen in these books, because this is a modern sort of property, and it's a video game oriented property. So when you get this sort of like very heavily sort of digitized work that's been done for this particular comic, and you get everything is like very clean line, and you have a lot of these sort of pastel blues and purples, some hints of neon. That's what you want, I think, in this type of comic book. It's it's future sci-fi, future mega Tokyo, I think, is where it takes place, or some future version of Tokyo or Japan, I believe. And that's kind of the look I think that you want. So I've been picking these up. So I found a few of these on Whatnot. Somebody was throwing them up in the auction. Here's issue number 3. Megaman fully charged. Just that color looks appropriate in a comic book like this. This sort of metallic blue. And now, if this were like a Marvel or a DC, I think, depending on the context of the scene, but I would probably gripe about it. Because you're so used to, I guess maybe it's sort of a weird muscle memory of your mind. You're so used to seeing comics created, the way they looked for almost 80 years, and then they look the way they do now, maybe it's jarring, especially to us old timers. But it seems appropriate. I mean, can there be improvements to this? Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think, and I wouldn't want every single Mega Man book to look like this. They probably do. But I would want to see versions of this character where maybe a little, maybe the artist does cut a little bit loose. Maybe he just kind of renders an entire issue in charcoal pencil and pastel oil crayon, something like that. I'd like to see something like that. That would be, not only would that be interesting visually, but it would be an interesting challenge for an artist. And this is where fan art, is so important, because you will see people who will take, inspiration from these and then kind of do it like in different mediums. Issue number 4. Let's see, when did these come out? 2020, so very recent. But yeah, you can tell. I mean, they've got kind of a set color palette they're playing with, but I think it's it's a well chosen color palette, I think. So not many complaints on these. I'm looking forward to reading them. Issue number 5. And I kind of like the whole Mega Man concept anyway. I'm not like a super mega fan of Mega Man. Like I said, I've never played the video game, or and I've only read a little bit of the Japanese manga, but it's kind of interesting how these get into the hands of sort of American studios, and they sort of get reinterpreted by American audiences and so forth, or American artists and writers. And I think in this case, they do a decent job. And this is Mega Man issue number 2, but this is from DW. Who is DW? Who are they? Dreamwave Productions. October 2003. Okay, so this is going back. Oh, and wow. I might like this even more. Look at this. That's cool. Here we've got some real pop in the colors. Yeah, so this version of Mega Man, the kind of more cartoony version, that's the more traditional manga type version that I'm familiar with. You see the use of really thick line, but clearly way more pop in the color here. So I was just talking about reinterpretation. This is what you're getting here. This is what you're getting here. This is interesting. And it's clearly digital. It's clearly digital coloring. There's a lot. Probably it might all be digital rendering too. This might have been drawn in an iPad. But 2003. Again, why are we getting better colors in this than we're getting, in what I just showed you from 2020? Look at the contrast in it too. So, again, this is that 15%. If 15% of it kind of looked, kind of like this, which I do think the color in this, though, is still a little, it's got more pop in it than what you're going to find in a Marvel or DC book. Look at this page. So this page is a good example. There's a lot of pop in that. But clearly the way they've rendered him, he's more of he looks more like a normal human adult. He's drawn in that way. He's not, kind of like the cartoonish way. But yeah, I no, it's interesting to see. I like both styles here. But I think this one definitely has got more pop in the color. But apparently in this version, it's kind of like he's like a high school student. He's clearly a younger individual, you know. The Boom Studios one, he's like a a teenager. So yeah, interesting. I like this though. I'm going to be looking out for more of these, definitely. So that's all I got from Whatnot, and then from my local comic book shop. When I was looking for Frank Miller's Ronin Book 2, issue number 6, I did find some 2099 titles. So here's Ravage, 2099, issue number 5. So as you know from my previous videos, I've been going out and scooping up any 2099 comic books that I find. So here's a peek into this one. I don't know really much about Ravage as a character, but from what I got these for like $1. I think they might be worth a lot more than that. They covered for $1.25. I think one of these was recently. I think issue number 1 was recently showcased on I think Cartoonist Kayfabe. So I think this might have been a popular title back when it was published. Yeah, back in 1993. So here's issue number 3. And let's see, who was doing the artwork? Yeah, Paul Ryan. Stan Lee was the writer. So, yeah, I don't know much about this comic book, but I'm collecting all the various 2099 titles. So. Issue number 2. Let's see. Let's look at some. Pop this one open. More Paul Ryan artwork. Issue number 4. The Mutroids. Nice. The Mutroids. Issue number 1 of The Spectre, Final Crisis Aftermath. So any issues of The Spectre that I come across, any iterations of The Spectre that I find, such as this one, I'll grab them. This one, let's see, was published in, this is clearly a modern age comic. I'm going to say it looks early 2000s. But I don't see any indicia. They put it in the back these days, so I see all the indicia, but I don't see a publication date, which is odd. Ah, here on the cover. July of 06. Okay, 2006. All right. Let's see here. Get some good action shots. Here we go. Will Pfeiffer is the writer. Cliff Chang, artist and cover. Okay. I don't know how many issues came out of this particular run of the Spectre, but I'll have to research that. I just grab them when I find them. This was interesting. Superman Kal, Kal. Dave Gibbons and Jose Lopez. In Elseworlds, heroes are taken from their usual settings and put into strange times and places, some that have existed or might have existed, and others that couldn't or shouldn't exist. The result is stories that make characters who are as familiar as yesterday seem as fresh as tomorrow. So, yeah, this was an Elseworlds. As you can see, it's got the Elseworld imprint. I picked it up because it was cheap It was in the back issue box. I think it was $1. And the writer and the artist. And I thought, well, and I've never even heard of it, and I've never seen it before. But basically, yeah, Kal-El is Superman, but he is in some sort of a medieval setting, in some sort of medieval Elseworld. So, I don't know if this is kind of like if Superman were to be born in that type of a world, how would things go? I think that's probably what it is, he probably winds up on this medieval planet and turns into sort of this medieval Superman. So that seems to be the deal there. Then they actually had a nice little selection of Superman. Let's see if I can get these into order. Yeah, here we go. Superman, the Doomsday Wars, Dan Jurgens, Norm Rapmund. Here's the back cover. Doomsday, the monster that killed Superman, has returned, deadlier than ever. The Justice League has already fallen before him, but the Man of Steel has another, more personal crisis to face. Superman is torn between his duty to humanity and to his oldest friend. Lana Lang's baby lies near death. The last son of Krypton may hold the key to solving both crises, but which will he choose? Yeah, anything Superman and Doomsday, it's worth checking out. So this, I believe this takes place after the death and resurrection of Superman. I'm pretty sure it does. This was published in 1998. So yeah. Dan Jurgens, writer and pencil artist. Norm Rapmund did the finished ink artist. So basically story and art by Jurgens. And, I like Dan Jurgens. I don't think I've ever read anything from Dan Jurgens where I was like, eh. So this is issue number 2. Let's see. Looks like there's the Spectre. Is that Hal Jordan too? Green Lantern, Captain Atom. So we got some. Looks like some Justice League action in here. I think there's Doomsday. Issue number 3. He is taking on Doomsday. Fighting him in space. Shatter. The first computerized comic from First Comics. So I don't know. I think this actually was and can lay claim to the title of the first computer-generated comic. Based on what I know, what I've read. And that's why I grabbed it. I've seen pictures of it online, but I never saw it, in the wild. So when I found it, I was like, oh, I got to grab this because one of my collecting fetishes is computer-generated comic books, especially these early ones. I'm not talking about the present day, issues, but these early ones. This was June of 1985 is when this was published. So I'm going to guess that maybe this was created. I mean, definitely desktop publishing software was used. Just kind of scanning the overview here to see if they mention what tools they used. Yeah, here it says, Peter told me they had this idea for a comic book produced entirely on a Macintosh. Well, not quite. For the time being, Peter would dialogue Mike's art on an Apple III, but it would be lettered on the Mac. If I hadn't seen Mike's samples, I never would have believed it. Okay, so they created it on a Mac, but I'm just wondering what the software was. Back then, I think like Amiga was a leading publisher. I forget what the name of their package was, but anyway, this is what it looks like. And this was created on an Apple III and a Macintosh in 1985. I'm sure it's got kind of cyberpunk storyline to it. I mean, for that period of time, it's not bad. It's not bad. You pretty much, you're getting some pretty good detail in the artwork, in these faces. This was like dot matrix printers too. I'm not sure if we even had not readily available laser printers back then. So you had those kind of like dot matrix printers. Yeah, very interesting. I don't know if this was a one shot or if it ran a few issues or not. I would like to get the other issues. I think this was a one shot. So, yeah. No, I was glad to find this. It's in pretty good shape, and it's kind of a novelty, but I think it's also sort of like I think it's kind of a piece of history. Oh, what I just noticed that was cool about the cover is look at the band. There's band names in here. You see Joy Division there? And Front 242. And those are both Front 242 is like an industrial band. And Joy Division, like everybody's heard of Joy Division. M. Sayans. I don't know who that is. That name sounds familiar. But yeah. Bereavement Fractals. Very interesting. Cool. Definitely will enjoy reading that. Speaking of cyberpunk, Batman Beyond, issue number 1. I did not actually have this. Issue 1 of 6. And let's see, this came out in 1999. I love the artwork in these. It's simple but impactful, effective. And it's very true to the animation style of the show, which is of course what it's derived from, is the animated series, and then made its way into the comic books. And there's cool. There's a nice little obituary for Bob Kane by Jeanette Kahn in this issue. You see, he passed away in 1998, creator of Batman. Yeah, and this is in great shape. I think I have these. I'm pretty sure I have these in a trade paperback, but never had any single issues. Found an issue of Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. Is this issue number 1? That might be why I grabbed it. No, this is issue number 13, variant cover number B. So, yeah, I was collecting these for a while. I think they're still being published. And it's got a lot of Frazetta artwork in it, but other artists too that have kind of like contributed. I've got about, I want to say I probably have about 10 issues of this. And I haven't sat down and read this series yet. But I don't have the early issues, so I don't really know. If I were to start, it would be probably around issue 5 or 6, and I wouldn't really know what was going on, possibly. But I'm sure these are going to get into a trade paperback, collected edition at some point, if they're not already. But I think the reason I grabbed this is because I don't have this cover. And that's a Frazetta cover. As is this a Frazetta cover as well. And this is issue number 14, cover B. Yeah. But these have some really cool artwork in the back pages too. So there's this whole line of Frazetta comics that are based on his famous paintings. Death Dealer being one of them, of course, famous character, so to speak, that was on the not Motley Crue, Molly Hatchet album covers. And I guess, his estate decided that it would be cool for Opus Comics to go ahead and write stories around it and kind of keep it true, to the spirit of Frank Frazetta's work, and that's what they've done. And they've also done it with Mothman, as you can see here with this ad. I do have the first 2 issues of Mothman. Those don't seem to be coming out as frequently as Death Dealer was. And then I do have I think I got the first 3 or 4 issues of Dawn Attack too, which was another famous Frazetta painting that they turned into a comic book. So it's a cool idea. Definitely a cool idea. And I've been, pretty satisfied with the artwork in these. The covers definitely have been great. But this is issue number 15. Excellent cover. That's another Frazetta painting, and I actually have not seen this painting before, but his signature is on it. Frazetta 74. Wow. I don't know what the name of this is, but man, that is cool. Don't want to come across one of those in the woods. It's a mean looking black bear, man. But the artwork is it's decent. I'd prefer some old school coloring. No surprise there. But the pencil work is great on these. And they run about, from what I've seen, it looks like they run about 25 to 30 pages of comics, for $4.99, and then you always get like these additional prints in the back, additional artwork and stuff. So they're a pretty good value for a modern comic book. All right, what else did I grab? They were having a sale on graphic novels, so I grabbed Melmoth from Dave Sim and Gerhard. I think this is the 5th book. Yeah, in the Cerebus saga, I guess you would say. And I've been scooping these up when I find them as well. I want to collect all of them. I have the first 2 volumes for sure. I've got Cerebus, the so-called phone books, and I've got what's the one after that? It's Church and State, I think, Volume 1, and then Church and State Volume 2, and then High Society. I think there's 2 volumes of High Society, so this might actually be like the 6th book in the series. But yeah, I've been wanting to get into some Cerebus. So when I was a kid, I was looking at individual Cerebus issues on the newsstand when they were coming out, and I was like, what is the deal with this aardvark? And I never bought it because I was like, well, it's in black and white. I didn't have the appreciation for black and white then that I do now. And I was like, why would I want to read about this freaking this like an aardvark who's like a barbarian, you know? And it's like, I got my Conan, I got my Gru the Wanderer. I don't need another, you know, another comic comedian, you know, barbarian type character. And then, you know, Cerebus obviously went on to be so much more than just a riff on Conan, and indeed turned into, you know, some kind of treatise on the human condition and metaphysics, as I understand it. So, you know, famously ran for, I don't know, what, 40 years? I think he's still, you know, I think Dave Sim is still doing stuff with Cerebus. I see him pop up frequently with the Ninja Mutant Turtles. I'm not sure what that is all about. But yeah, this is a, you know, this definitely delves into the area of serious sequential art, not your everyday comic book type of art and storytelling. And that is why I'm so interested in it. The type of comics that I'm making are kind of like this. You know, they're not so much, you know, traditional kind of like superhero action stories. So that's why I got interested in these. And you know, the more I learned about Cerebus just in reading, you know, the history online and watching a couple of videos here and there, and then thumbing through these when I found them, the more intrigued I became by this little aardvark guy here. And so I decided, yeah, I wanted to start collecting them. So when I do come across these used, you know, I buy them, and I'm trying to fill out the whole phone book collection. You got a couple of more, as if that wasn't enough. I still got 2 more items here. Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill, Heart of Ice. This is Nemo. So the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I maintain is one of the greatest comic books ever written, illustrated, created. I think it's better than Watchmen. I think it's better than... well, really, I think it's kind of the pinnacle for Alan Moore, in my opinion. I think it got good love back when it came out. I don't think it gets enough love now. But to me, it was a groundbreaking comic in the fact that it was just so good. It was just so... reading it, I didn't feel like I was reading a comic book, you know? Even though you're clearly reading a comic book. But, and I'm speaking specifically to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, you know, the first collected volumes of it, or the first, I don't know, 10 issues or whatever. There have been, you know, successive collected works from it, which I have not read all of them, but the first is the best. You know, the first iteration of the team is the best. And the movie wasn't that bad either. I'm sorry, that's not a popular opinion, but I didn't think the movie was that bad. I actually saw the movie before I saw the comic, and it didn't ruin it for me. So, anyway, but I do love the character of Nemo, and you know, they spun him off into his own comics and stuff. So, I think there's this one, which I didn't have before. Clearly, which is why I picked it up. But also, what was the other one? I think it's called The Rose of Cairo. I think was the first spin-off, the first Nemo spin-off. And I don't know what kind of mayhem Nemo's getting involved in this one, but I have a sense that it's sort of an H.P. Lovecraftian situation, which is a perfect arena for Nemo to get involved in, I think, you know, with him as a character. But yeah, I just you know, I love that character. I love that first team. I wish that they would, if Alan Moore were to come back to comics, that's what I would want him to do, is more League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Also found this book here, Superman, The Complete History. What sold me on this book was that it was designed by Chip Kidd, and I am a fan of Chip Kidd. He's a fantastic graphic designer and book designer, just really a genius. He excels at when he does books around comic books because he loves comic books. Clearly, he's done some fantastic. He did the Bat manga book. I think he's done another Batman book too. But yeah, it's got some. They reprint some of the old. I don't know if this is the new strip or maybe if it was from some of the Action Comics. But you get some comics that are reprinted in here. You get it's basically just a kind of a retrospective of Superman and Superman related material. And the thing about Chip Kidd, like, he's always going to go out and get, like, the merchandise and stuff. He's going to show you the toys and stuff. Here's some of the, I guess, some cells from the original animated Superman cartoons. Chip Kidd's going to dig into the library of stuff. Let's see if there's any action figures in here. Yeah. So it's some kind of wooden action figure. What else? Oh, of course, we got to get the Christopher Reeve Clark Kent in there. The movies, the classic Superman movies with Margot Kidder and Chris Reeve. Yeah, I think there's like a whole chapter here on the romance between Superman and Lois Lane. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. They were having like this ridiculous sale, like everything was like 25%. Actually, I should say 75% off. So, but you had to get 3 of them. So that Superman book was the final. When I saw that, I was like, "Oh yeah, Chip Kidd. Yeah, I'll pick that up." There's a lot of good Superman visuals in there. All right. Well, that concludes today's video. Trying to think what I'm going to do next. I haven't really thought about it. I still want to do some more side-by-side comparisons of modern comics versus today, versus like Bronze Age or Silver Age comics, but I might hold off on that because I've talked about that a lot in the last couple of videos. So, and I think that's some chatter that's kind of making the rounds now, so it might be sort of repetitive at this point. But yeah, I've got a ton of other comics to go through. So there's certainly never going to be a shortage of that. So I think in the next one, maybe I'll pull out some of my old boxes from the 80s and finally start going through those and putting them up on camera. There's always going to be a lot of goodies in there for sure. Surprises that even I will find, because I don't remember every single comic book I've ever bought before, which is kind of the fun of it. So that might be the case. Until then, take care of yourselves and always stay geek.